Okay. So, hello. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. We are going to start out with a blanket roll for the back, for the spine. So have the blanket long enough that it can be underneath you from your head to your hips. And we're going to roll it up. So you have a long, skinny roll. And then we're going to put the hips up. Lay the whole spine back, and your head will also be on the blanket. And then just check it out. If you notice that your chin is jutting up towards the ceiling where the neck hurts, you can kind of fold the blanket back so you have a little more height under your head, or just stick another blanket or a pillow under there. If it feels okay to close your eyes, close them, or else set your gaze softly at one spot. And we'll start out with the knees bent, feet on the floor. You're going to find constructive rest in your hips. So you might need to take the feet a little further away from you, a little wider apart, so that you don't need the muscles around your hip joints to work so hard to keep your knees up like this. And then just notice how the blanket holds you. And take a moment to check in with your space. Notice the sounds around you, the air on your skin. All the places you land down. So the blanket holding your hips, your head, parts of your spine. Notice the imprint of your feet. The imprint of your arms, your hands. And start to trace from the bottom to the top of your spine. And you might not feel your tailbone, but you should feel your sacrum firmly connected with the blanket. So that's the kind of triangular shaped bone in between the back of your hips. With your knees bent, your lumbar spine might be resting on the blanket, but it might be, a bit lighter than the sacrum. And you probably have a stronger connection through your ribcage spine, your thoracic spine. Less of a connection through your cervical spine, and then a nice, strong connection with the back of your head, even if it's elevated. Can you imagine your breath moving from the bottom to the top as you inhale and tracing the front of your spine? And then as you exhale, your breath move back down, returning to where it begins. And as you continue to watch the movement of your breath, you might set an intention or a dedication for your practice. You can take your arms out wide if they're not already pretty wide. And then let's extend the legs out straight. Feel for a more active press down for your right heel. And then slide that right heel away from you, feeling your right hip shift towards the foot. And then release that and do it on the left side. So press down through your left heel and then actively reach out for the foot. And you can do that a couple times on each side. So your SI joints, the connection between your hip bones, ilia, and your sacrum, pretty stable joint, but there's definitely room to move and shift. And so you can feel maybe some of that as you slide out through your heels. And just pause, let the blanket hold you. And roll off the blanket. You can keep it in this roll, maybe place it behind the head or the neck if that feels comfortable here. The body in Shavasana, so legs still extended. And we're just going to slide the right heel up towards the butt as you bend your knee. And then roll the knee open like you're moving into tree pose. And then bring the knee back up and extend the leg back out. We'll just do that a couple of times, just feeling for sliding the heel as high up towards your seat as you can, and then that external rotation of the hip. You can go slow here. Notice where there might be ease in the movement. Notice where there might be a challenge. Maybe you're feeling a little bit of heat. And then pause. Observing any sensations in your hips. And we'll do the left side. So bring the heel in. And then opening up the knee. We'll do that a couple times. And once things feel about even, just back to Shavasana and observe the sensation in your hips. Go ahead and roll over onto your left side. Knees drawn up towards the chest. You can have that rolled up blanket under the side of your head if you need something higher. Go ahead and build it up. And you're going to grab hold of your right wrist with your left hand and give it a little tug so you can start to kind of slide the right hand along the floor in front of you, turning your chest towards the floor. You're already probably feeling a stretch along that right upper back, all the muscles that connect to your spine, all around that right rib cage. I'm always surprised at how much I feel a stretch in my chest here. And so we'll give it a couple of breaths for the body to get used to being in this shape. And then if it feels like you could go in a little further, you can bring your right foot onto the ground behind you and start to turn the knee up towards the ceiling. So that same external rotation of the hip. And see if you can externally rotate the right hip without losing too much of the turning of your chest towards the floor. And notice what you feel. So your arms have roots all the way down into your lower back, all the way down into the connective tissue around your sacrum. So you might feel that connection all the way down into there. How does it feel if you imagine your breath moving into there? Is there anywhere else that it might feel interesting to direct your breath into? I was talking to a coworker at my insurance job earlier today. I'm like, oh, come take my yoga class tonight. She's like, oh, I already got my workout in today. I'm like, oh no, this is not what we're doing. We're rolling around on the floor for at least 30 minutes to start. It's a different kind of thing. We're working out something different. Richard Freeman calls it kung fu on yourself. Let's take another couple breaths here. If things are starting to feel real comfortable, maybe your left knee tries to join your right, or maybe your right leg kind of continues open towards padangusthasana, so you kind of roll to the outer edge of that right foot. And then unravel all of it, and we'll come back to Shavasana. And then roll over onto your right side. Knees bent and drawn up into the chest. We'll do the same thing, holding the left wrist with your right hand, draw it along the floor away from you so that you kind of manually turn your chest towards the floor with that right hand. See how it feels. So this might be very different than the first side, which is normal, depending on your handedness and which arm you use to shove things around. Could you imagine that all of the muscle and the tissue that's holding onto that left shoulder blade could let go a little bit so that your shoulder blade can glide across your upper back towards your hands. And is there anything to observe in your chest, in your armpit? Maybe you already feel some connections down into your lower back, down into your sacrum. And then if this feels comfortable, your left foot will step behind you, bring your left knee into constructive rest. And you're using your breath to massage from the inside, anything that feels tight, restricted, dull. If there's room to go further, your right foot can try to, or your right knee can try to join your left. Or again, maybe your left foot, your left knee rolls open more, going to the outer edge of that left foot towards padangusthasana. When you get an option to take a pose into a new place, it's always interesting to see, does it make you have to hold your breath? Does it cause like a whole lot of bracing and resistance? And can you see that initial resistance start to shift if you stay, or does it just get worse? And if it just gets worse, you back out a little bit. Unwind it all, come back to Shavasana. I know we usually, come through constructive rest first, and you can definitely do that, especially if your low back or your neck is uncomfortable. I'm just really enjoying Shavasana this week. So please still have support behind your head if you'd like, but you do want to have a blanket or a pillow or something that you can use to kind of prop up under the outer hip for the next shape. And you might want a strap as well, or something you can use as a strap. And then come back to Shavasana. Okay. Hug your right knee in. And then press down through your left heel, just like we did when we had the spinal roll underneath us, and just kind of slide that heel a little bit forward so you feel that shift of your left hip down. And then you can strap up your right foot, extending any amount up towards the ceiling. And then you're just gonna roll just a little bit to the left so that your right hip comes a little bit off the floor. And just really tuck a support underneath there. So if you're using a block, not quite as nice unless it's one of the foam ones, blanket, pillow, whatever you have. Kind of tuck it under the top outer right thigh bone. And then we'll open up, taking that right leg out to the right. Really letting the top of that right femur, top of that right thigh bone sink onto the support underneath you. Can your right leg try to actively grow longer? Really from the right groin all the way down through the inner arch. And then you can bring a little bend into the knee and come back to center. Coming back to Shavasana. How do you feel in your right leg compared to your left? And then we'll hug the left knee. Press down through your right heel and extend out, growing that right leg a little bit longer. And then we'll strap up the left foot and send that right up towards the ceiling. And then whatever you were using for your prop, you're going to tuck it under your outer left hip and kind of roll a little bit to the right so that the hip picks up off the floor, so that when you open up the leg, the support is really high up on the outer thigh. And then open it up. If you're not using your Ujjayi breath, it might be nice here, kind of closing off the back of the throat, starting to create that ocean sound. Let's see, could both of your legs be more active participants in this shape? Could they try to grow a little longer? When things feel about even, come back to center and come back to Shavasana. And now, how do your legs feel? How does it feel to breathe? Take out whatever prop you have underneath your head. And you're going to roll over onto your right side and extend your right arm long. And just check it out. You want to have your ankles, your knees, your hips, your shoulders, your head, and your hand all in one nice long line. So check that out. And first, you can just let your head rest down on your right arm. Use your left fingers to help with balance. And we're going to bend the right elbow and hold the head. You might even use that hand to give a little traction to your right occipital bone, so the kind of little bony, sticky outy bit at the bottom of your skull. And have a nice little stretch away from the neck. And then we're going to turn the head so we're looking down over the left shoulder towards the feet. And then imagine that you could take your front right hip point and slide it into your left one, and take your left front hip point and slide it into your right. So if you could bring those 2 points a little closer together. And then maybe your left hand rests on your left hip. And then maybe you slide your left heel up the leg, externally rotating that thigh towards a tree pose shape. And it might be plenty to stay here in balance. But you might be able to reach down and grab your left big toe. Gaze at one spot, somewhere that's not going to move. Maybe you extend that left leg up towards the ceiling any amount. Now the right side of your body is actively pressing down into the floor. Right foot, right knee, even if it's not connected, right hip, right elbow is reaching long away from you. There's that external rotation of your left thigh bone. And you're still breathing on purpose. This is padangusthasana. And it's a pretty challenging balance pose, but it's one that's kind of nice because if you fall out, you're not going to go very far. Release that left foot if you have it, and we're all going to slowly bring the left foot next to the right. Bring the left hand down. Release the head and roll back into Shavasana. And let's take that all on the other side. So roll on over to your left side. And line it up. Hand, elbow, shoulder, hip, knee, ankle, nice long line. And your head can rest down to start. And start to find the stability in your core, the front hip points moving towards each other. Is it possible to create more steady breathing? And then we'll bend the left elbow and hold the head. And you can do the same thing on this side where you give a little traction to the base of the left side of the skull. These muscles get so tight from just trying to hold your head on all day, especially if you're looking down slightly at your phone. And turn your head so you're looking down towards your feet. And then maybe the right hand leaves the floor. Gaze at one spot, so set your drishti, your gaze point. And then maybe your left heel traces, or sorry, your right heel traces the inside of that left leg. Maybe you reach down for the big toe. And there's no rush to any of this. You can stop and pause and breathe anywhere that feels interesting. Little external rotation in the thigh and a solid connection into the floor. And you're breathing. And that steady breath and the steady gaze hopefully translate into some steadiness inside your brain. And when things feel about even, come back to Shavasana. Hug your knees into your chest. Go ahead and rock and roll up to a seat. And then, as best you can with no hands, come up to standing. And grab a block. Spread your toes. Lift your heels and then lift your toes, lift the balls of the feet. Just kind of rock a little bit from the front to the back of your feet. And then really spread the toes. Find a nice solid connection with the ground. And we're going to put the block in between the thighs, the skinny way. Press down firmly through your heels. Base of big toe, base of pinky toe. Gently squeeze on the block. And imagine that not only could you squeeze in, you could also start to slide the block up. It might not go anywhere, but can you imagine your inner thighs holding the block and starting to lift it up towards the center of your pelvic floor? Like the block could take an elevator right up, maybe even through your pelvic floor, right up through the center of the spine, and out through the crown of the head. Still that nice, active, firm connection with your feet to the ground. Little squeeze on the block, and at the same time, even if it's, 99.9% imaginary, can you lift the block up through the center of the pelvic floor, as if it could come right up through the center of the diaphragm and out through the crown of the head. And then let's inhale and take the arms up, palms facing forward. And as much as your feet are pushing into the floor, your hands are trying to reach up towards the ceiling. And rather than feeling like you're trying to pull your arms up by squeezing at the tops of the shoulders, could you push your arms up? Can you slide your arms up from your upper side ribs? Can you feel the shoulder blades on the upper back raise the arms up? And then let's bend the knees, come into chair pose. So you get a nice low drop to the hips. But then can you still feel like you could give a little squeeze onto the block and lift it up? And how does that feel through pelvic floor? Are there any sensations that you can notice in your belly? And the answer might be no, or I don't know, but you're paying attention. Let's take one more breath in, and then exhale, slide your hips back, bend your knees more, bring the hands to the ground. And then any amount, start to lift the hips up. And let the head drop. So your knees might stay pretty bent if the backs of the legs are short. And for most of us, we spend a fair amount of time sitting. Backs of the legs are usually short. So the hips slide up, any amount that feels okay. Head drops down. And then again here, can you give a little squeeze on the block? And imagine lifting it up, that little elevator, into your pelvis. Does that help float the hips a little higher? Is there anything that you can notice in your belly? Inhale, press down through your fingertips, lengthen your heart forward. Give a little squeeze on the block. Think about your pubic bone and your tailbone reaching back. You might even feel the block shift back a little bit. Press down through the feet, exhale, hold your hips. And then inhale, stand up. Take a breath in. Exhale, release the arms down. Inhale, arms up. You're probably already doing it, but a little squeeze on the block. Imagine sliding it up. And then exhale, chair pose. Same thing here. Even if it's just in your imagination, and then hands come down, hips drop lower. And then the hips rise any amount. Lift that block up any amount. And then you can take the block out and step into downward facing dog. You can put the block back in here, but I think the memory of it will be enough, but you can decide. Could you imagine holding onto that block in between your upper thighs? And the same thing, draw it up. Relax your belly. Shoulder blades and upper side ribs lengthening towards your hands. and your feet are firmly pressing the floor away in a way that helps you float the block even higher. Good. Inhale, take your right leg back and up. And then exhale, draw the right knee into the chest. Bring your shoulders forward over your wrists. Squeeze that knee in as close to the chest as you can get it. And then step in between the hands. And, help the foot up there if it doesn't make it all the way. That's asking a lot. So you might just, reach back to the ankle and move it up there. Runner's lunge. Your back knee is lifted. Hands can be on blocks, tented fingers, or the floor. Now set your gaze at one spot, or close your eyes, and I want you to imagine that you have a phantom right leg that's doing exactly what your left leg is doing. And that in between those two legs, your phantom right leg and your left leg, you could hold a block. And then draw that block up and out through the crown of your head. Okay, and now you have your right leg, nice steady push of the floor with that right foot. Can you imagine that you have a left leg doing what your right leg is doing? Can you hold a block in between those thighs? And does that give you any amount of stability to then hold your hips? Or maybe reach the arms forward and grow your shoulder blades towards your hands. And like the answer might be again, like, no, not yet, not today. Hands come back to the hips, hands come down, no problem. If you're breathing and you're paying attention, and you're honoring what's right for your body in this moment, you're doing yoga, so you're good. Release the back knee down. Walk the hands up to the front knee. And same thing, feel your actual legs. Feel your phantom legs. Hold your imaginary blocks. And then you take the arms up. Palms facing forward. Really reaching up. And you just kind of play around. Would it feel more comfortable to tip the pelvis forward a little bit? Would it feel more comfortable to lengthen down through the tailbone? Maybe you bend the front knee more, maybe you back out. And then we'll bring the hands down and step into plank. Gazing somewhere softly in front of your fingertips. Notice how it feels to breathe. Can your shoulder blades chase your hands here? What if you still had a block in between your thighs? And then lower all the way down to your belly if you're not there already. And come up into Sphinx. So elbows under your shoulders, forearms parallel. Hold that imaginary block in between your thighs. And even as your leg bones reach back, can you squeeze onto that block and draw it up your spine and out through the crown of your head. Spread the collarbones, lift up through the fronts of the armpits, root down through the bones of the hands. Yeah. And just notice, what are you paying attention to? And when you do notice that you're paying attention to something else, are you nice about it? Let's take another breath in. Exhale, lower all the way down. You're gonna bring your arms down by your sides, bring your forehead to the mat. Still that imaginary block in between your thighs, lift everything up into locust pose. So I have my 8-week-old nephew is living with me for 1 more week, and he's doing so good with his tummy time. Lifting everything up, balancing on the belly, he's like a pro. You guys you're doing just as good as Casey, I see you. Feel the front of the armpits lift. Good. Grow your legs longer and then see if you can come up a little higher. And then you're gonna keep this back bend that you have, bring your hands under your shoulders, and on your next exhale, just tip it back until your feet land. When your feet land, start to pull the mat underneath you to lift your chest a little bit more. Straighten the arms any amount. I love seeing the pets move around. And then exhale, downward facing dog. Nice work, you guys. I see lots of kitties, but I don't see Nelson. Let's take the left leg back and up. Oh, he's sleeping. Oh, he's so cute. Step the left foot forward. Good, and you're in your runner's lunge, so hands can be on blocks, tented fingers, what's comfortable. For what's helpful. Good. All right, now you guys are getting really good at this. You have your actual right leg back behind you, and then you have your phantom left leg. They're doing the same thing, nice and stable. Both of those heels are reaching back, and then you're holding that imaginary block. So you gotta imagine that you can feel that, right? And then notice what it does in your body when you have a reaction to that. And then same thing with your front leg. You have your actual left leg, and then your phantom right leg that's doing what your left leg is doing. And then you're holding a block, just like when we were in chair pose. Maybe that gives you the stability to hold your hips. Maybe you straighten the arms out in front of you, which is a big ask. So, you maybe try it and you're, this is good for today. Or maybe you're like, woo, got this today. And then the hands come down, back knee comes down, and we'll take it into the low lunge. So you can hold the front knee, take the arms up. You know what's up. Come into the shape, set your gaze, and let's just breathe here. And if the imaginary block was helpful, go ahead and feel into that. If it wasn't, let it go. How is the ground supporting you? Good, and then hands come down and we'll step into plank. And so come into your plank, set your gaze at one spot, and we're gonna hold plank for as long as you can maintain steady breathing. And for as long as you can use that breath to help quiet the chatter. And there's going to be a certain point where you're just tired, and that's a valid reason to come down. So you'll come down. And you'll notice so quickly in just a plank pose, all the different stories that come up about, why you should stay here, what it means about you when you come down, what it means about you that you're staying up, all this stuff. And then just like an exhale, you let it go, and you come into child's pose. Bring your hands by your knees and your child's pose. Tuck your toes under and press into a standing forward fold. And then roll your way all the way up to mountain pose. And you see what's comfortable in your pelvis and your mountain pose. We're not holding the block anymore, but you can imagine that. You have your feet, toes spread wide, rooting down. And some of us are naturally more kind of forward tipping in the pelvis. So the pubic bone, the bottom front of the pelvis, kind of drops lower than the tailbone. So you get that little curve in your back. And some of us are more naturally tailbone drops a little bit lower, pubic bone lifts up, pelvis tips back. And so you just kind of find what's neutral. You can exaggerate one, come into the opposite, and then find neutral. And then imagine from the inside your pelvic floor, you could draw your pubic bone and your tailbone towards each other underneath you. Engage pubic bone towards tail, tail towards pubic bone. And then you know where your sit bones are, right? Could you imagine drawing those two towards each other? And then what if you could draw all four bones in towards the middle of the pelvic floor and lift it up? Does holding an imaginary block help with that at all? It might just be, feel a little hint of it. So we're going to maintain that. We're going to slide the left heel up. Slide the left heel up, close to the seat, and then rotate the thigh out, coming into tree pose. You can reach down and kind of help the foot up a little higher. Hands can come to your heart, you can hold your hips, you can have your arms out like you're holding if you're a tightrope walker holding a pole. And now you don't even really have to imagine the block anymore because you have your lifted foot. And so foot presses into thigh, thigh presses into foot. And could you imagine lifting them up? Picking right up through the center of the pelvic floor as you go, up through the diaphragm, out through the crown of the head, all the way up into the ceiling. Steady breathing. Good. Nice job, you guys. And then release that side. Feel the relief of having 2 feet. Yeah. And then reset from the base up. And you can set up the other side. So slide the heel up, rotating the knee out. Help the foot on up there if you need to. And there's that connection between foot and inner thigh, thigh and foot. Lifts up. And even as you're getting all this lifting, your standing foot is still pushing the floor. Good, and then when that feels about even, just stand on both feet, shake it out. Find your mountain pose. Whichever foot you were just balancing on, bring that knee up into your chest. Give it a squeeze, and then reestablish mountain pose with your standing leg. So your foot's gonna push down, feeling that lift all the way up through the crown. You can stay here, holding the knee. You could reach down and grab your big toe. Take the other arm straight up towards the ceiling. Feel how long you can get. Now you've been here already. Maybe you just open up the knee. And then maybe any amount, you start to straighten that leg. Does not have to be straight, but it can move in that direction. You can kind of play around with what it's like to balance here. Could you imagine that you still are standing on both legs and you're holding a block? And then release. Shake it out. If you have one or both blocks still handy, it can be right on the floor in front of you, the tall leg. And you're going to take the leg that you were just standing on, and you're going to cross that ankle over the other thigh and sit back like a chair pose. Maybe hands on your block. Maybe hands on the floor. Maybe standing leg straightens any amount. You can kind of roll that bent knee, hip back away from your waist. And whatever you're doing, you're breathing. All right, come to stand on up, shake it out. So the leg you just crossed, pull that knee up into your chest. And find mountain, foot's pressing down, crown of the head's reaching up. Whatever these imaginary tools that we've been using that have helped you balance, go ahead and draw on those now. And reach down and grab your big toe. Like today it might be enough just to find the toe. Yeah. Gaze at one spot, steady breathing. Maybe you open the knee. Other arm comes straight up towards the ceiling. Just because it feels good and kind of gives you that memory back to padangusthasana, just lying on your side. Maybe the leg starts to reach out to the side. And your leg, if you're holding onto that foot is trying to drag your arm away, but your arm is resisting it. And that can help give you the balance as well to stay upright. Nice work, you guys. Stand on both feet. And take what was just your standing leg. You're going to cross that ankle over your other thigh. And sit back towards chair pose. You can take it as more of a balance if you'd like today. Bring your hands on your block. Maybe hands to the floor. Maybe work towards straightening that leg. and release. And we'll come to mountain pose at the front of the mat. You can stay in mountain with the feet any distance apart, or you could bring the feet together and really zip out through the inseams of the legs. Gaze at one spot. And the imprint of everything that we just did, all the cells in your brain that are holding on to that information, imagine they could just kind of dissolve down, all the way down through the center of your spine, through the inseams of your legs and into the floor. And then inhale, take the arms up. Exhale, fold. Lengthen your heart forward as you inhale. Exhale, step back to plank and lower halfway or all the way onto your belly. Back bend as you inhale. And downward facing dog, exhale. Breathe in. Breathe out. Inhale. Exhale. 3 more breaths. Maybe you hold that imaginary block with your thighs. You're going to lift that block a little higher, come up onto the balls of the feet, lifting the heels nice and high. Round your spine towards the ceiling. Start to bring the shoulders forward over your wrists. You're going to lower the hips down, keep the thighs lifted, and pull the heart forward through the upper arms into upward facing dog. You're imagining that you're holding that block in between your thighs. Keep it held, keep it lifted. Feel the fronts of the armpits pick up. Take one more breath in here, and then exhale. Downward facing dog. Breathe in. Breathe out. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Do that one more time. Think about the block. Lift it up. Lift your heels up. Round your spine towards the ceiling and start to roll forward. Shoulders coming forward over the wrists as your hips drop down. But you're holding that imaginary block away from the floor. Pull the heart through the upper arms. Good. Fronts of the armpits lift. Legs are nice and strong. And then downward facing dog. Breathe in. Breathe out. Spreading the fingers, pushing down to the floor with your hands and your feet. I said one more, but you guys know I don't really like even numbers, so we're going to do 1/3. A third downward facing dog, or upward facing dog. Take a breath in. We're going to lift that imaginary block, lift the heels, round the spine forward. Hips come down. Inhale, lift the heart. Push the floor away with your hands, with your feet. And then downward facing dog. Release the knees. Take a child's pose or something else that feels restorative. And then find your way onto your back. Come into constructive rest. So knees bent, feet on the floor. Taking your feet as wide as your mat. Turn your toes out slightly. We'll take a breath in here. And then exhale, drop the knees over to the left. Your right knee can actively reach forward, feel that right thigh slide forward, and then inhale back through center. And exhale, knees to the right, finding a little more length through your left thigh. Inhale back to center. Exhale to the left. Inhale back to center. Exhale to the right. And once more through, inhale. Exhale. Maybe let your awareness watch the changing imprint of the back of your hips. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Center. And then exhale. Shavasana. With as much support underneath you so that you feel held. Give the weight of your body, the weight of your bones to gravity. And let go of the control of your breath. So you're just here to watch your body breathe. Or to watch any other sensation that keeps you quiet. a long breath in through your nose. And let it out. Notice which nostril is more open and you roll over to that side. And press up to your seat. Bring your hands over your heart if you like. And I'll close out by chanting one Om. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Don't feel like you need to say hello, but if you'd like, you can.